Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher Dum. I am a co-facilitator and co-founder of the ID13 Prison Literacy Project, and I'm here with Jason Kahler. So, Jason, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about your relation to ID13 here.
Good morning, Professor Dum, and good morning, everybody else. My name is Jason Kahler. My relationship to the ID13 project is that I was involved with making a chapbook at FCI Elkton, which is in Lisbon, Ohio, which is available for everybody to look at on the ID13 project website. Basically, the chapbook came about because one of the guys that I know at prison there at FCI Elkton had a copy of one of the ID13 chapbooks, and we looked at it, and we reached out to the ID13 project. At Elkton, we had a nice group of writers. I'd been teaching poetry classes in the ACE program, and we thought how wonderful it would be to get some ID13 project teachers and mentors to come in to Elkton. So we reached out and sent an email, and I think it was you, Professor Dum, it was a letter. And you, Professor,
Yep.
sent a letter back almost immediately, which is always a thrill, saying, you would look into getting some people to come visit Elkton, but in the meantime, why don't we take some of our writers and make a book? So we started assembling all of the poetry writers at FCI Elkton, and there are more than I ever could have imagined, which is wonderful, and put a little something together. Started a bit of an exchange with the students at Kent State University, who looked at some of the early versions of our poems and sent just absolutely wonderfully insightful and helpful feedback. And lo and behold, a few months later, we had a book.
Well, it was an awesome experience. The students really enjoyed that. They're part of the community service honors fraternity here on campus. Could you just give a little more insight, maybe perhaps into sort of the writing community that was already at Elkton? I think it's important to showcase just so much of the talent and the things that guys in prison right now are working on. Just sort of on their own time through their own motivation. It's not like that we are the catalyst for that. You're doing that on your own. So if you could just talk more about that.
Well, sure. One of the things that writers in the real world always lament is the fact that they would be writers if they only had the time. So guys who are in prison, that is one of the resources that they have. They have time, and they need to find ways to use it productively and purposefully, and hopefully in a way that kind of encourages some growth. So at Elkton and at all federal prisons, there's a program called the Adult Continuing Education Program, ACE for short, that encourages prisoners to develop curricula to deliver to fellow prisoners. There's no money involved at FCI Elkton. It's just a way to productively spend your time. So at Elkton, there's actually this cohort of writing teachers and writing classes that's kind of developed. I was teaching the poetry classes. There's another fella who was teaching fiction writing classes. Another gentleman was teaching creative nonfiction and memoir. And so there's this little, almost like a little English degree program going on there. And a lot of guys who don't take the courses spend their time writing as well. So the ACE classes are an opportunity to formalize that work and to provide them with feedback. There are some advantages to taking ACE classes. It looks good for your program review. It may help you get more time at home confinement and that kind of thing. But primarily, it's a way to fill the hours in the day. For my classes, we always ran the poetry workshops like a college poetry workshop. Rough drafts come in, we exchange them, we give comments with the expectation then that things get revised. And the final project was always a collection that the guys would put together on their own. I insisted that they gave it a title, just kind of to formalize it. I really wanted them to have something that when we were done with the 16 weeks, they could send it home and they
Right.
could say, this is what I'm doing. I'm a real person doing real work. I encouraged the guys to write about the prison experience if they wanted to, but they didn't have to. So it's reflected in our collection too. You've got some poems that we call prison poems, and then you've got some poems that are just poems.
Hmm.
And it's just a way to grow, and it's a way to deal with life, which isn't that what writing is always about anyway.
Jason, if you could talk about the title, the development of the title, and the artwork. 'Cause I just think it's a really just kind of stunning piece, and what you all wanted to convey through the title and the artwork.
Sure, I'm happy to. The title of our chapbook is Through Fences, and the artwork was done by Samuel Ortiz, who is a gentleman that I knew at Elkton. We wanted to give the collection a title that hinted at the ability of writing to transcend space and time, which sounds very science fiction-y. But the poems in the book are trying to reach an audience on the other side of a fence and allow them to reach back through the fence to the guys who wrote it. There is a permeability to that fence because of the writing. And one of the main things that prisoners worry about is that people see them as something other than just people. And we're hoping that these poems bring home the idea that these are guys who made some decisions that they shouldn't have made, but they're in the process of making better ones now. And here's some better decisions right here. And it goes through the fences, and it goes beyond that particular situation. And hopefully at the end of the day, it's a hopeful title. It talks about the future. Everybody at FCI Elkton has an out date. Everybody at FCI Elkton will someday go home. And we need those guys to be ready, and we need the world to be ready to accept them back home and let them become what they can become.
Awesome, terrific. Thank you so much. Are there any, I guess, pieces in here that really strike you that you want to share for people? Through ID13, we publish so much stuff, but I think it's so more powerful to hear the actual writer reading the piece. So
sure. Well,
any...
the first poem I'll read is Jim's poem. James Northrup was the gentleman who had the original chapbook that got all of this started. So I think it's appropriate to share his. And his poem, which is on page 16, is called Wake Up Call. My life was a blur. I had one thing on my mind. The feeling of flying always turned into a feeling of desperation. Time went on that way, and then there was that red and blue behind me, a knee in my back, cold steel on my wrist. Now steel rods interrupt the view out my window. No matter what time of year, they are cold. Since then, I found his grace. Now my eyes are bright. The feeling is calm.
Awesome, thank you. And you, how long did you know Jim in Elkton?
Say that again?
How long did you know Jim in Elkton?
Well, I knew Jim the whole time I was at Elkton, which is about 2 years. We were on the same housing unit. Jim, when I got there, had this long hair, and he's a big fella, and he was pretty imposing, and I was a little afraid of him. And one day we were both at the library at the same time. And he looked over at me because he recognized me, and he said, "Aren't you the English teacher?" And I did one of those, like you talking to me kind of things. And I said, yes, I am. And it was December. So I'd been there just a few months. And he said he wanted to read some Christmas stories. Could I make a recommendation for some Christmas stories? And so I recommended the David Sedaris short story collection that included his bit about being an elf at with Santa in the mall.
Right,
So,
Santaline Diaries, I believe.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so David Sedaris is great. And so I recommended that to him, and he said, "Okay, great. Oh, and by the way," and he held out this hand, and I mean, his hand is a giant paw of a hand. And he said, "But my name is Jim."
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, my name is Jason." And we were buddies the rest of the time. And he read those stories and liked it. And just goes to show you can't judge a book by the cover, except this cover you can judge it by. I feel like a salesman.
Yeah,
And
no, it is. It's terrific.
it's there are Jim's poem, I think, shows the kind of man he is now. I don't want to speak for the kind of man that he may have been before, but this is the guy that he is now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, really quickly, if you could just sort of tell us a little about what your plans are now that you've been out. Reentry is such an important issue. So if you could just talk a little about the transition and what you're trying to do now, especially too, sort of in the light of how the state of the world at the moment, with COVID and things like that, it must, be quite different.
Yeah, well, I've been gone from Elkton for 4 months now, and the pandemic situation has kind of made my homecoming a little strange. I was very fortunate. I'm very grateful that I left Elkton probably 2 weeks before the pandemic really hit and started shutting everything down. And if you've been following the news, FCI Elkton is one of the institutions that was hit pretty hard. So my thoughts and a prayer every day go out to those guys who are trying to stay safe and get home, and to the staff who are trying to make the best decisions that they can in the worst of circumstances. If you wanted to build a place to spread disease, you would build a prison. So it's just a bad situation. And I think about those guys all the time, and the staff
Mm-hmm.
that are working to try to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
As for me, I'm here at home. And what are the plans? Well, the plans are to write, and I'm trying to figure out what my role is as somebody who has left prison, and hopefully to teach again someday. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think the evidence supports that I'm pretty good at it. And hopefully I'll get a chance. But that's all that everybody who leaves prison is looking for, is a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the world will give them that opportunity. I tell people, everybody knows the worst thing I ever did. That's the same with all those guys who I met at Elkton. Now it's time to do some better things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And your work organizing and writing for this chapbook is a great thing. And it was just such a rewarding, awesome experience to be able to do that with you all through technology and good old snail mail, right? I mean, it just
yeah,
just kind of using everything that at all the resources that we had, to make it happen. And
prison makes people understand opportunity in a way that I think they never did before. And absolutely, the work that you and the rest of the ID 13 Project volunteers does, there's no way to say how much it helps people. It is powerful work that you guys are doing, and you cannot underestimate how important it was for those guys to get those comments back from their poems, to know that their work can exist in the real world, to feel just for a moment that they're making a connection. One of the guys whose poems is in this book came up to me and said, "Jason, I always wanted to be a published poet, and now I am." And he just had a glow about him. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
yeah.
For a group of guys who often feel forgotten. So thank you very much on their behalf and on mine for
thank you.
Time valuable.
I mean, we wouldn't we do everything that we do for people who are affected by the system. So that's we serve at the pleasure of of the people who want us. So I was wondering if you could finish off our talk by reading a piece that you wrote, so we could so we can hear your words from you.
Sure.
Thank you.
My piece is called Understanding Winter. The plowman, so good at his job, has buried the mailbox. Its peak juts out from beneath the drift. In the street, my ankles vanish in the ruts carved through the packed piles by the neighbor's Cadillac. The sun's a faded dandelion gone to seed, low on a horizon of crowfoot trees. Without mail, no Christmas cards, no Boxing Day circulars. Canada leaks to us across the river into Michigan. I listen to their radio stations because they swear better. Tonight, Don Cherry wears bright yellow with green palms, while Detroit searches for its disappeared highways. 696 is frosted smooth. I'd miss school on a day like today if it wasn't already Christmas break. If it wasn't hockey night in Canada on our driveway. If it wasn't sunny and warm somewhere else. And today wasn't the price for our perfect Halloween.
Gosh, yeah, I love it. As a hockey fan, someone who enjoys swearing, and just a person who's affected a lot by weather, and just thinking about how it ruins and makes things, and brings everything together, and just thinking about the seasons and what we do and sort of the world. So thank you. I think the awesome thing about writing. So you talked sort of about prison poems and then sort of these other poems. I think, there's just this universality of, I don't even know if that's a word, but, they tap into these universal themes and experiences that I think just serve to unite us and remind us of who we are and what we share. So thank you so much for writing and sharing that, and for taking the time to speak with us today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity for everything. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, my pleasure.